They confronted politicians, challenged the police, and protected black citizens from brutality. They were the Black Panthers. Established in 1966 in Oakland, California, the Black Panther Party for self-defense emerged as one of the most impactful militant black power organizations of its time. Following the assassination of Malcolm X in 1965, Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seeley, students at Merritt Junior College in Oakland, California, established the Black Panther Party for self-defense on October 15, 1966 in West Oakland. They organized the most controversial protest in the history of black people, shaping the world we live in today. Before we move forward, make sure you have subscribed to this channel and click on the bell icon. Despite the passage of civil rights legislation in the 1960s, which followed the landmark U.S. Supreme Court ruling in Brown v. Board of Education of Topeka in 1954, African Americans residing in cities across North America continued to face profound economic and social inequality. Urban centers experienced poverty, diminished public services, substandard living conditions, high unemployment rates, chronic health issues, violence, and limited avenues for socioeconomic advancement. These challenges contributed to urban uprisings during the 1960s. Additionally, authorities increasingly resorted to police violence as a means to enforce order in cities throughout North America. The police brutality rate was rising exponentially day by day, and countering police brutality was at the core of Black Panther's mission. The party, established in 1965, became famous nationwide in just 2 years. One of the important events that spurred the formation of the Black Panther Party was the killing of Matthew Johnson, an unarmed black 16-year-old, by police in San Francisco in 1966. Following this, Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seeley, the founders of the Black Panther Party, adopted a strategy to monitor police activities and prevent similar incidents. They organized legally armed teams to observe police actions in black neighborhoods, aiming to deter violence and hold law enforcement accountable for their actions. During an era when discussions of police brutality often focused on southern cities with Jim Crow laws, the Black Panther Party's actions in apparently progressive cities played an important role in broadening the national understanding of systemic racism. Stanley Nelson, director of the 2015 documentary The Black Panthers, Vanguard of the Revolution, emphasized the importance of the Panthers' efforts, stating, "There was no focus on police brutality in the North. The Panthers really put focus on what so many people, especially African Americans in the North, felt and knew." Black Panther also created a document in 1966 known as the 10-Point Program, created by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seeley, and first published in 1967. This is a set of guidelines that outline the party's ideals and operations. It includes land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. Exemption from conscription for black men, full employment for black people, and an end to exploitation of black communities by capitalists, decent housing, and trials for black people by juries of their peers or black community members. The Black Panther Party was known for its controversial way of demanding their rights. This takes us to the most controversial protest, the protest for the gun bill. As mentioned earlier, Black Panther was trying to protect black neighborhoods from police brutality by organizing legally armed groups. The Panthers told recruits that the gun is the only thing that will free us, gain us our liberation. Newton and other members of the party utilized California's permissive open carry laws to directly challenge law enforcement engaging in activities aimed at policing the police. However, on May 2, 1967, the Black Panther Party's bold and confrontational approach reached its peak when members of the party rallied at the California State Capitol to protest against a proposed bill they perceived as a grave threat. The bill, introduced by conservative Republican Don Mulford in the California legislature, aimed to prohibit the public carrying of loaded firearms in the state. The legislative move directly targeted the Black Panthers, intending to dismantle or weaken the organization by criminalizing their primary tactic. When the Panthers arrived, Governor Ronald Reagan, who was on the front lawn at the time, was rushed inside. Moving with determination, they started walking toward the second-floor assembly chamber. They intended to read out aloud Executive Mandate Number 1, a statement showing their opposition to the bill. However, when they weren't allowed inside, they decided to step outside. On the Capitol steps, Bobby Seeley read a written statement in front of Governor Ronald Reagan. The American people in general, and the black people in particular, Seeley declared, must take careful note of the racist California legislature aimed at keeping the black people disarmed and powerless. The moment was iconic. Panthers carrying loaded weapons was an unforgettable sight. Scared by the power demonstration of Black Panthers, the bill was passed by both the State Assembly and Senate with support from the NRA. Now, in addition to repealing open carry gun laws in California, Mulford also prohibited the carrying of firearms into the Capitol. On July 28th, Governor Reagan signed the bill into law, expressing his belief that there was no reason why on the street today a citizen should be carrying loaded weapons. This led to the arrest of Seeley and 5 other Panthers. Though the protest was not successful, it gave the Panthers the spotlight. They became a household name. Regardless of the race, everyone was talking about them. In 1967, they started their own newspaper, which helped them spread their ideology to more and more black people. The newspaper became a tool to communicate with their community and distribute information about the party's activities. The BPP newspaper grew from a 4-page newsletter to a full newspaper in less than a year, and about 500 issues were printed. With this, the Black Panthers won the trust of the black community. The first cover featured the case of Denzel Dowell, a brother murdered by the Richmond police, and the BPP was called in by his family to investigate what happened to him. Following Huey Newton's shooting and imprisonment in October of 1967, the Black Panther Party newspaper experienced remarkable growth alongside the organization itself. Distributed not only in the Bay Area, but also internationally, the BPP newspaper became a prominent publication. Published every Wednesday, it was printed in San Francisco by Howard Quinn Printers. From 1968 to 1971, the BPP newspaper emerged as the premier black weekly newspaper, selling over 300,000 copies each week. Priced at 25 cents, it featured comprehensive coverage of national and international news. Initially, sellers received a dime from each copy sold. Additionally, every Panther was required to read and study the newspaper before engaging in sales. Black Panther not only raised its voice for what they believed was right, but through the newspaper, they gave the people of the black community a platform to put forth their views. This takes us to another intense protest that shaped the nation. The People's Park protest was a pivotal event that occurred in Berkeley, California in 1969. It began as a grassroots effort to reclaim a vacant lot owned by the University of California, Berkeley, and transform it into a public park for the community. However, the protest escalated into a violent confrontation between protesters and law enforcement, resulting in injuries and fatalities. The origins of the People's Park protest can be traced back to the early 1960s when the university acquired a plot of land in Berkeley with plans to develop student housing. By the late 1960s, the university had yet to develop the land, leaving it vacant and unused. In response, local residents and activists saw an opportunity to create a communal space for recreation and social gatherings. In April 1969, a group of activists, including Black Panthers and community members, began to clear the vacant lot and plant trees, flowers, and gardens, transforming it into what they envisioned as People's Park. The park quickly became a symbol of resistance against urban renewal and the university's perceived neglect of the community needs. However, tensions escalated when university officials decided to reclaim the land and proceed with their development plans. On May 15, 1969, workers arrived at the park with bulldozers to fence over the area and prepare it for construction. In response, protesters gathered to resist the eviction and defend the park that they had created. The situation quickly spiraled out of control as the protest turned violent. Law enforcement officers, including police officers and National Guard troops, were deployed to suppress the demonstration. Tear gas was used to disperse the crowds, and clashes erupted between protesters and authorities. The involvement of the Black Panthers in the People's Park protest added another dimension to the conflict. The Black Panthers, a militant black power organization, saw the struggle for People's Park as part of a broader fight against social injustice and oppression. They offered support to the protesters and advocated for the rights of marginalized communities in Berkeley. The confrontation between protesters and law enforcement reached its peak on May 15, 1969, a day that would become known as Bloody Thursday. At noon, before the situation spiraled out of control, there were approximately 3,000 people at the protest site. However, as the protest grew violent, the crowd swelled to 4,000 people. During clashes between demonstrators and police, gunfire erupted, resulting in casualties on both sides. Among the casualties was James Rector, a bystander who was fatally shot by law enforcement officers. The police discharged tear gas canisters and buckshot at the backs of the dispersing crowd. Initially, authorities claimed only birdshot had been utilized as shotgun ammunition. However, when physicians presented pellets extracted from the wounded as evidence of buckshot use, Alameda County Sheriff Frank Madigan defended the decision, citing the necessity due to limited manpower and the threat posed by the situation. The violence of Bloody Thursday shocked the nation and drew widespread condemnation. Images of injured protesters and the heavy-handed tactics used by law enforcement circulated in the media, sparking outrage and calls for accountability. In the aftermath of the People's Park protest, the park remained a contested space, symbolizing the ongoing struggle for social justice and community empowerment. Despite attempts to develop the land, People's Park has endured as a symbol of resistance and solidarity in Berkeley. A year later, on December 4, 1971, the New Orleans Police Department, NOPD, engaged in a shootout with members of the Black Panther Party who were inside their headquarters. The standoff occurred after the police attempted to execute a search warrant at the Black Panther Party's headquarters in the Desire Public Housing Development. The police claimed that they were searching for illegal weapons, but the Black Panthers alleged that the raid was politically motivated and aimed at undermining their organization. The confrontation quickly escalated into a shootout between the police and the members of the Black Panther Party. 30,000 rounds were fired by police, yet not a single man, woman, or child was killed in the process. However, several officers and Panthers were injured during the exchange of gunfire. Seeing the brutality of the police, the Panthers decided to surrender to protect the people of the neighborhood. This marked the downfall of the Black Panthers, as after the surrender, even though Black Panthers engaged in several activities, none of them could earn the Black Panthers the same level of popularity as before.